Hi, this is Creating Your Life, Sex and Romance, episode 48, Romance After Marriage. So I'm back. I've been gone a few months, being very busy with things. Sorry about the delay for those of you waiting breathlessly for these. I'm going to talk about romance after marriage because here's the thing. I think that if romance ends when marriage begins, then the marriage is not going to last. Romance has to continue. It'll continue in different forms, because it's not one where one partner is wooing the other. It's a little bit different, and so I'm going to talk through some ideas on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a book by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. This is a very popular book. You can get it on Amazon. And he does a really good job of laying out 5 types of love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And this book is full of examples of these and gives, if you really want to bring some more romance back into your marriage, I think these are good things. He gives you some good ideas. I'm going to give you mine, so I'll put my spin on it a bit, but I'm going to use his framework because I think it's a real good framework. So first, let's talk about words of affirmation. Remember, when you go back to Creating Your Life, the first videos that I did, we talked about goal setting and about the importance of the kind of words you use, the words you think, how your thoughts manifest in very particular ways. And remember this idea that you move toward and become like what you put your attention on. And when you're in a relationship with somebody, when you're married, this is something to pay attention to. It's not just the words you think about yourself and say to yourself. It's the words that you think about and say to other people, the people that you love, your beloved. Are you saying words that, are inspiring? And you may remember the Pygmalion effect that we talked about, that your words and the way you think about people affect them and can actually have a decided effect on how they behave and respond and perform. Remember, the Pygmalion effect goes back to late 60s, early 70s, when some researchers went into an elementary school. I think it was a 3rd or 4th grade class, where they went to the teacher and said, at the beginning of the school year, we're going to test all your students and we're going to tell you who the high performers are. And then you'll be able to evaluate them at the end to see how well they do. So they went in to test, and what they didn't tell the teacher is they didn't have a real test. All they were going to do was randomly select students as high performers and tell the teacher that. At the end of the school year, they did test the kids and found out those ones that they selected did turn out to be high performers. So in other words, the teacher held the image of who the high performers were, and it affected how he or she behaved towards those students, which elevated them into performing well. And you can imagine others were kind of left behind, and perhaps on the unconscious image that the teacher held for them. It's very powerful, the way we think about people, where we put our attention inwardly on them. The question then, are your words loving, inspiring, and motivating? Or do you tend towards being critical and even contemptuous? And if you remember, having contempt for someone you love is a real good sign that things are at an end. How critical are you? What is the proportion of critical words versus inspiring words? Are the words that you using, do they both convey love and that you like your beloved? I mean, sometimes you say you love somebody, but maybe you don't really like them. Maybe you find yourself in a position where I don't really like this person that I love. And can you have both? Is that a good idea in a relationship particularly? Here's the thing. Your words, they can either build or destroy. And to what extent do you indulge the destruction of others through your words? Romance is a repetitive and continuous series of actions. This is the idea about, well, if you're thinking about romance after marriage, then the question is, what is it that you do repeatedly over time that conveys romance? And how do you talk and act towards your beloved? Does your beloved walk on eggshells around you? Or are you so critical sometimes? Or are there certain topics or certain things where you've responded with anger that sets them on edge? Nobody likes an angry person, and nobody likes to be around angry people. And if you're setting up any kind of condition in your relationship, in your love, in your marriage, where you're requiring somebody to walk eggshells around you at certain times. This is not a good sign. The goal is simple. First, make sure you affirm at least 90% of the time, and then make it 100%. If you have to say something critical, try, work it around in a way where it doesn't really come across as critical. It comes across as helpful. And if you find yourself in a pattern where you're saying things and you can just see that your beloved is shutting down, then maybe that's just not a place to go, because they're not hearing you anyway. Quality time. Here's the thing. If you're going to spend time with your beloved, one of the ways to determine quality time is whether or not you're actively listening to your beloved. Do you maintain eye contact and respond thoughtfully? This is something I need to work on, because I could be on my iPad, I could be reading a book, my wife is talking to me, and I don't always stop and give her eye contact and then respond as if I know. Sometimes she says that she'll be talking to me and it's clear I'm not listening, so she'll start answering for me and she'll have her own little conversation because I am just out to lunch because I'm focused on what I'm doing. And this obviously is not how you spend quality time with someone you love. Do you and your beloved engage in regular activities together? My wife and I have made it a point to every weekend, like every Saturday morning, there was a time where we would go to our favorite coffee shop or breakfast place, or vary it. But we would do these things regularly, where we had a little routine together that was just a special place and time for us. So the question is, do you have that ability? Is there some place that your beloved loves to go to regularly? Even if it's like once a month or once a quarter, or a favorite garden or something. What does your beloved love to do, and how can you spend time doing it and set up the expectation, we're going to do this together? Do you share your pleasures? In other words, do you share quality time together? All of these things represent quality time. Receiving gifts, another of Chapman's qualities. Gifts of love come in many forms. It can come in the words you use, affirming words. It can come in the quality time you have, but it also can come in material gifts of all kinds, which we know. That's kind of standard. But there's also gifts of self. This could be your time, your attention, and your positive presence. And so we've already kind of touched on this, but the idea is, do you spend quality time together? And is there a way that you can begin giving this as a gift to your beloved? Setting up certain kinds of activities together, giving their attention, your positive presence. And, we have gifts associated with traditions like birthdays, anniversaries, and others. Do you do them in a different or a new way? Can you put a spin on it? So for us, birthdays, my wife likes the idea of a birthday month. A birthday month meaning, number one, you don't have to give the gift on the birthday. It's nice to have one. But gifts could be given, something could be done the entire month. So it's not just a day, it's a month. So I try to do something different every year. Sometimes I don't have the creative drive to do it, but sometimes I do. I remember one month, her birthday, I got 30 cards and I gave her one card for every day in her month. And every day she would get a new card, which was kind of cool, plus a gift on her birthday. Anniversaries, I try to do something that's special and that's kind of unique to her. She loves unusual watches, so if I ever find an unusual watch, I would buy it for her. She likes a very particular kind of t-shirt with animals on it or other things in different styles. She loves owls, so I started buying her some owl t-shirts. I stumbled on one really nice one. She loves it, so I bought a backup and gave it to her. Another time, her Valentine's Day for us comes like 3 months before her birthday. And so on Valentine's Day, I got her a really nice shirt with a horse on it. She really loved the style. So I went back and found the manufacturer and got several others of different animals and things in the same kind of style. And those are coming up on her birthday. So the question is, how do you make traditional gifts uncommon and special? What can you do that's different? Then there's acts of service. Couples fall easily into routines, and I'm not talking about the traditional Saturday morning breakfast kind of thing. There's other kind of routines we just fall into. And so the question is, how can you shake that up? So, since romance seeks a surprise with a gift of self, one way of doing this is taking on the burden of a routine. The traditional expectation, the wife does the cooking and cleaning and this kind of thing, and the man does the yard and garbage and auto repair and vehicle maintenance and such. So sometimes just it's a surprise. So my wife cooks dinner more than I, but occasionally I'll just, especially when I know she's working hard, I'll just say, hey, why don't I cook lunch or dinner or something, or I'll surprise her with cleaning everything up. And I shouldn't, it's probably a bad idea to say, hey, look what I did for you, because she's like, yeah, I do this every day. But it doesn't hurt to occasionally do this. Is there anything your beloved has asked you to do over and over again over the last weeks or months? Something you've not yet done. Pay attention to what's being asked of you. And if it ever comes up, I've asked you this before, could you do this? It's a kind of act of service, an act of love to actually do it occasionally. Listen to your beloved. He's constantly asking you for gifts of service in some way. So try to listen, try to give quality time, try to do the kind of things necessary to help keep the romance alive in new and different ways. Finally, there's physical touch. And there's a motivational speaker named Connie Podesta. You can go to YouTube and watch some of her videos. She's really great. She's funny and very smart. And, if she had this video of this story online, I'd link to it, but I got it off of a CD. I purchased a set of her CDs. Very motivational, very good. And she talks about something that addresses physical touch. She was brought into a small hospital, and it was a mandatory all-employee meeting. You can imagine, what that would be like. Nothing employees love as much as a mandatory meeting where they have to sit and listen to some consultant and not do any work that they have to do. She was brought in. This is under the topic of difficult people. That wasn't the topic she was talking to them about, but she tells this story when she talks about how to deal with difficult people. So in the back was this guy, Harold. He looked like he was ready for retirement. He was at the end of his career path. He slouched in his chair. His arms are folded, giving her a look that said, I hate being here. There's nothing more you have to offer me. It's over. She wanted to include him, so she went up and asked him his name, and he replied that he didn't have to tell her. He was present, and that's all that was required. That's all he was giving her. She found a couple of the other people in the audience more responsive, and at break, people came up to her and just told her about old mean Harold. They said he'd been like this for about 5 years. He used to be nice, but now he was nasty and mad, so people just avoided him. They don't know what happened, but nobody talked to him anymore. They didn't invite him to anything. So when the session started up again, she walked up to Harold. She sat in his lap and then continued delivering her talk to the room. She just sat there. She didn't say anything to him. She just sat on his lap and started going on. After about 3 minutes, she started to get up, but he pulled her back into his lap. She talked that way for 45 minutes, and at the end, his head was laying on her shoulder. After the session, she followed him out and asked him if he was okay. He turned to her sobbing and came up to her and put his arms around her and said, "You are the first person who has touched me since my wife died 5 years ago." Sometimes I think we underestimate the power of touch. It's something that if we're not doing it naturally, we may not be aware of how we're missing out on something. So the question is, how often do you touch your beloved? Do weeks go by without a hug, a kiss, holding hands, or what? Do you lead kind of separate lives together? Touch is the gift of service that affirms quality. It kind of brings everything together. So pay attention to this. See if there's something more you can do, because people, unless they have a phobia about it, and this would be something obviously you would already know. Otherwise, you might not be touching enough, and that can make all the difference. Okay. Our next episode is going to be on happiness. Interesting topic. In the meantime, you may want to go to markandrealexander.com for podcasts, blogs, and other interesting things.